Hi, I'm Madeline Seveland with the Carver County Water Management Organization. I'm here on the site of a new development in Carver, Minnesota to learn about construction site erosion control, which is basically managing how soil moves around on a construction site. To learn more, I'm meeting with Masha and Hentges, who both know a lot about construction sites and soil. But to understand why managing soil on a construction site is so important, we first have to go back to some basics about rain and soil.
On undeveloped landscapes with healthy soils and vegetation like trees, grass, and flowers, rainwater soaks into the soil to be used by plant roots and recharge our groundwater supplies. Because of the type of work done on a construction site, much of the vegetation is removed. Also removed is that first layer of soil that is great at soaking up water. We call this topsoil. With topsoil removed, what's left on a construction site is often bare soil like this clay, with little nutrients and little ability to soak in water. When heavy rains meet these bare soils, the powerful force of the raindrops can loosen the soil and wash it away. If not captured, that soil can then go into the storm drains and wash into our lakes, rivers, and wetlands, causing sediment pollution. This leads to muddy, turbid waters. And sediment can bring with it other pollutants, such as heavy metals and phosphorus, which leads to additional problems like algae blooms. To explore how to prevent sediment pollution, I got a tour of the site and to learn more about some of the practices being used.
So pre-development, the area was all farm field. It was cropped in corner soybeans like you see now. And during developed conditions, so this is being converted into a residential development. And so the corn and soybeans, which have their roots and leaf cover and protect the soil from erosion, are removed. The bare soils are exposed. Topsoil, which has high organic matter content and retains water well, is stripped. And so now we have this open area.
As it turns out, the way to prevent that sediment pollution is done in two steps: erosion control and sediment control, each with its own set of practices and its own goals. Erosion control practices are intended to stabilize the site and keep soil in place. These practices protect bare soil from rain, which would otherwise wash the soil away.
Some common erosion control practices that are used on sites are erosion control blanketing, like turf reinforcement matting. Topsoil is good erosion control just in that it protects the underlying soils that are more erosive from being suspended and washed away. And probably most importantly is establishing vegetation, so seeding or sodding as quickly as possible.
Erosion controlled blankets are made out of plastic fibers, straw, or other plant fibers like coconut, and are designed to protect the soil from the impact of raindrops and from rainwater washing over the land.
Topsoil is very important for all living aspects. If it wasn't for topsoil and water, we would not be here. And so it's important when we come to these construction sites is to take the topsoil, remove it, keep it on site, and then we put it back on after the development is done. The homes are built, and we go back and we place that topsoil.
Sediment control is needed because at times during construction, soils do have to be exposed for work to get done. These practices keep soils on site. They capture sediment that has been washed away and prevent it from leaving the site and causing sediment pollution.
Sediment control practices is the biologs and silt fence that you see around this area. Also, we have inlet protection that's in the curb catch basins, and you'll see those on construction sites. And once that's asphalted and curbed and stuff like that, we can start putting the catch basins in. So that's a sediment practice that we use quite a bit also on an urban site.
Another couple that come to mind are temporary sediment ponds for holding water on site and settling out sediments, and just in general trying not to create erosive flows. So protecting steep areas, making sure that water doesn't channelize in unprotected areas. Those are big ones.
These are biologs. They're basically just rolls that are filled with mulch or wood chips, and the point is that in a rain event, when sediment starts washing away, it doesn't wash right into the street and into storm inlets. Instead, it gets caught behind the biologs, and it stays there until it could get cleaned out. Also, the biologs can be replaced if needed. This is an example of a temporary sediment control that can be used until sod is placed. What you're looking at here is silt fence. This is also an example of a sediment control, so if erosion is already happening, the silt fence will catch sediment that is washing down after a rain. It's required around the perimeter of all active construction sites, anywhere where the soil is disturbed. If soil is disturbed around downstream water resources that we need to protect, like lakes, rivers, and wetlands, they'll have to have redundant silt fences. So you would basically just have 2 rows in case one of them washes out, which does sometimes happen.
This is an inlet protection for a curb catch basin. This will be set right into this catch basin, and this is a curb, obviously, catch basin, and so this will capture any sediment that drains to the street, that gets past the silt fence, the biologs, etc., or gets on the street and runs into it. And so how this works is this is contained, and this is a filter around this inlet. So it doesn't capture the clays, obviously, but it'll capture the silts and the sands. And there is a ton of sediment that leaves these sites, and that's why it's important to have stormwater ponds during construction. I'm a huge believer in it. I work with all the contractors, and it just, we talk about putting these things in, because this is just a great example, just showing you guys. I mean, this is all clay flats, and look at the layers. This is all the deposits that happened during construction. This project here started last spring, and so this has been over a year of development, and look at how much erosion happened on the site. That's what we're trying to protect. That's why construction site erosion and sediment control is so important, because if we don't stop this, if we want to have the sediment basin here, this would have went right into the gully that's just adjacent by the elementary school here, and right down to the Minnesota River.
Look at the color of that water. You could hardly see a couple inches down. It's really turbid. So if we didn't have temporary sediment basins, that's the quality of water that would be leaving a site. So we really want to make sure that we keep all of that turbid water on the site, use a skimmer to get just the clean surface water off, and then only allow water to really leave the site once the whole site is stabilized, topsoil, vegetation, and the water clarity is much better.
Steep slopes are a higher risk for erosion, so making sure that these areas are protected is key to preventing sediment pollution. Once erosion starts on a steep slope, it can lead to rills and gullies forming. Rills are areas where runoff begins to channelize and carve into the soil. When rills get really large, they become gullies. To protect steep slopes, we go back to some of the erosion control methods that we mentioned earlier.
With the right practices, construction can be done without causing sediment pollution in waters. These practices aren't just good ideas, they're also required by local, state, and federal regulations. Carver County's Water Management Organization and Soil Water Conservation District are both responsible for ensuring these practices are part of construction projects. Their roles include reviewing plans before construction begins, checking for impacts to water resources both upstream and downstream of a project, issuing permits, and doing site visits to ensure erosion and sediment control practices are working properly. One of the requirements unique to our organization is the topsoil ordinance. This requires the soil to be decompacted after the site is finished, and that 6 inches of topsoil be placed down before putting down sod or seeding. This helps new grass and other vegetation build roots, absorb more water, prevent runoff, and become green and healthy. All of which leads to better protection for the lakes, rivers, and wetlands we enjoy.